Okay, we're live, everyone. For those that are listening live, welcome. Those who are going to be listening on rebroadcast, welcome too. So we have a wonderful guest. I'm very excited and happy to have Ford Myers join us today. We have a really great discussion. Quick, just some quick updates on who I am and what I do. You can see I'm a real estate broker. I'm going on to my 39th year. I've been involved in all facets of real estate from uh, residential, renovation, senior housing. That's really where I focus and that's where I specialize on. And I've done a lot of speaking, public speaking, a lot of writing. I wrote two books, like our guest. I know Ford, you've written some books as well. And I have some of my team members, I think, also on the call. Everyone was kind of silenced, but I have some other team members that are listening and joining as well. So welcome. We're gonna try to keep this to about an hour. We have a very, very special guest, and for those that came in a little early, we were saying that Ford, you pretty much have done, as you said, a pivot and a shift. And I think that's very commendable that you were able to do that. But I've known Ford for many, many years, and you were a career coach. You had this very, very successful company. I think before that there was a marketing company. You've been involved in tons of speaking events. You're a national writer. You're a publisher. Ford, I could probably go on and on and on, but I want to welcome you and say hello to everyone.
Well, thanks. I really appreciate that review of my background, and I'm very happy to be here. I'm looking forward to having a dynamic and very interesting conversation with you, Brett.
Thank you. So that's our speaker, and what this is all about is kind of what everyone asks me is, do I have enough for it? And that's really, in what I see, most of my clients are senior home sellers, and many of them are starting to transition into retirement and trying to figure out exactly what they're going to be doing when that happens. Ford, could you just elaborate a little bit on that whole topic of do I have enough? What does it really mean?
Well, okay, so as you indicated, I'm a retirement coach primarily now. That's what I focus on. And so I have conversations with people all the time about the main concerns that they face when they are approaching or when they are entering retirement. And the biggest question that people ask is, do I have enough money?
Money. Okay, so it's the money question.
Yeah, it's the money question. If you stop 50 people on the street who are retirement age and say, what's your biggest worry? What's your biggest concern? They'll say, oh, I always think about, do I have enough money? Am I going to outlive my money? And the funny thing is that even quite wealthy people have the same worry and the same concern. So it's not just people who are really strapped financially, it's people even who have enormous means. It's very interesting psychologically. But the problem is that in this culture, we are taught to essentially ask only one question. Do I have enough money? And that is an important question. Of course, you have to make sure that you have enough resources to live through a lengthy retirement. But it's not enough to just ask, do I have enough money? It's also about having enough purpose, identity, connection, direction. In other words, people need a well thought out, solid plan. Okay? They need to spend some time planning and thinking and worrying about the other aspects of retirement, not just money. The funny thing is, people will spend a huge amount of time and even money, spending money on retirement advisors, or rather, I should say, financial planners. They'll spend money on financial planners. They'll read articles and go to seminars on the money aspects of retirement.
Absolutely.
But what they don't do is spend any time on creating this solid plan for retirement on the non-financial side. So it's not just about do I have enough money, it's do I have enough of a life plan. Without this, people will generally wind up adrift, disappointed, confused, and unhappy.
And Ford, do I have enough thought process? When do you advise the people listening and the people you consult to, when do they start that process?
I think it should be at least 5 to 10 years before retirement. Again, people will spend more time and energy planning a wedding or a vacation as compared to planning the next 20, 30 years of their retirement. It's really, really strange. So I believe that it's never too early to start planning, and certainly they should be thinking about their retirement plans 5 to 10 years before their actual retirement date.
So it's 5 to 10 years is what you're recommending everybody.
Yes, and that
And tell
includes
us,
that includes financial planning, but is not exclusive to financial planning.
because it seems like everybody starts and that's what I hear about, the financial piece of it, but I never hear about the second part of what you're describing. I don't hear that ever. I never hear that actually.
Well, that leads very well into your second question.
Okay.
What surprises people? So go ahead, ask your question.
So, Ford,
Yeah, may
what
I
is
ask?
it that would surprise people? They've lived their entire life working for maybe one company, and maybe that's, not necessarily accurate anymore because the world has changed, as we know, and all these companies, it seems like, the it just changes so rapidly and so quickly. COVID occurred, and then we had people working from home, and now they're back in the office, and there's just changes continually. But is there something that does really surprise people when they actually retire? What is that?
Well, there are a lot of surprises, I believe, that confront people. And not only are people surprised, but they often feel like they're the only ones, like there's something wrong with them or that they're weird because no one ever told them that they might encounter these challenges. But the fact is, they're not alone. It's very common for people to be confronted with these challenges. I'd like to read you a quotation, which is one of my favorite quotations. It's from a woman who's a writer and a counselor and a consultant. Her name is Kathleen Rail, Rehl. Kathleen
Okay.
Rail. Here's her quotation. Retirement is not just about leaving the workforce. It's a complex life transition that can stir deep questions about identity, direction, and meaning. The traditional model of retirement planning is increasingly inadequate, especially when it fails to account for the emotional weight of transitions that shake a person's sense of self. That is a great quotation. I,
And
I mean, think about that last phrase, transitions that shake a person's sense of self. So, to answer your question more directly, I think that there are two major surprises that people encounter when they move toward retirement. The first one is when they realize that money is not the biggest concern. We already touched on this. It's all these other factors that I've mentioned: purpose, identity, connection, direction, meaning, even a sense of loss and grieving for the parts of work that they are surprised to miss. So, one of the biggest concern, or I should say biggest surprises, as you asked, was when they realized that money isn't the biggest concern. It's all these other factors that they confront. The second major surprise, in my opinion, is when people realize that retirement is not just one long, wonderful vacation. People have this image in their head from the advertising industry, and all these marketers who put out images of, the happy couple strolling hand in hand on the beach with
Yes.
their pants rolled up,
Yes.
their pants rolled up to their knees, and they're, dangling their sandals in their hand, and they're smiling in the sunshine with their feet wading through the lapping ocean up onto the sand. Guess what, folks? That's a bill of goods that you have been sold. That ain't the way it really works. Now, people will have a honeymoon period. Sure, they retire, they feel free, they're liberated, they're so excited, they can do whatever they want, whenever they want. But you know what happens after a short period of time, or it could be a year, it could be even 2 years for some people, but then they hit a wall, okay? They hit a wall because they suddenly say to themselves, oh, wait, is this all there is? I'm bored. You can't play golf every day. You can't go see the grandchildren every single day of your life. What are you going to do? Sit around and watch reruns of I Love Lucy on TV for 24 hours a day?
I actually like that show.
Yes. But look, people need some kind of anchor, all right? They need to work on a plan. They need to structure their time. They need to build and maintain relationships. They need to have a sense of purpose and a reason to get up in the morning. So what happens is people hit this wall and then they realize, oh my God, they're shocked and surprised that retirement is not just one long happy vacation.
So am I hearing from you that is the system broken in terms of, you know, all of my clients go to the direction of the financial planner path. Let's call it that's the path. And it seems to me that that path kind of focuses on only one piece of the puzzle, which is the financial piece. It's not looking at the anchors and all the other things. Is that system then broken?
The system is completely broken and it is inadequate. Look, there are some financial advisors who understand all this stuff and they've read about it and they've thought about it and they're trying to help their clients to explore not just the financial questions, but all these other factors that we've been talking about. But those kinds of financial planners are few and far between. Essentially, they're not equipped, trained, they're not prepared to really delve into these different facets of retirement as a retirement coach would be. So, financial planners
Okay.
generally should not be striving to give advice on all the other factors of retirement, except maybe in a minimal way. And retirement coaches like myself should not be endeavoring to provide financial advice, except in a very simplistic, very superficial way. Look, people ask me financial questions all the time, and I know just enough to give them some direction or some context, but I don't get into the nitty gritty of the numbers. I don't do spreadsheets and I don't make investment recommendations, but I know a lot about it, so I'm able to give them at least some general direction and pointers, but then I will refer them to a financial professional. And I often refer people to some great financial planners that I know, as well as other kinds of consultants and service providers. So people have to know their wheelhouse. They have to know their limitations. And, you need to strive to really shine in your own discipline and not try to be all things to all people.
And in the financial services world, do you think it's just that they just don't know? I mean, or it's not, is it the system of, they're getting compensated for selling things like insurance and retirement funds and money funds and all that? Is it more that? Do you think that's really the problem?
Well, I think part of it is that, but I also think that they're just not comfortable or not aware or not able to delve into these other critical facets of the retirement transition.
You know what it is, Ford? I look at it like it's similar to my business in that, so like I now my super specialization, if you will, is senior housing, right? So, but I live it, I breathe it, I'm in it every single day. You visit like the financial planner. who might be someone nowhere near retirement, they're not even thinking about, what that anchor and what that next step is. Is that
Yes.
probably a true statement?
Yes. And as you said also, you got to think about what is their motivation? Where is their bread buttered?
Ah,
Okay. You mentioned the kind of financial broker or advisor who sells products like insurance and annuities and
okay.
stocks and bonds. Well, okay, so they make commissions on those transactions. Even if you speak to a financial advisor who is a fee only financial advisor, meaning they don't have commissions, they don't sell products, they don't have those conflicts of interest. So even if they are a fiduciary who, by definition, has your best interests at heart,
Heart.
even if they do not sell products or make commissions, they still are focused on their main, priority, the main thing they're trained in, which is the dollars and cents.
Got it.
So, people stick with what they know, and they don't really have the expertise or the training in most cases to discuss and to handle all these other aspects of the retirement transition, which is why there are retirement coaches. There's also a million retirement books, articles, podcasts, blogs, which are wonderful sources of information on all these other facets we've been talking about.
Yeah, that's very interesting, Ford. So
And let me say something else, Brett.
go ahead, keep going.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No.
When I teach courses on retirement, when I have groups on retirement, seminars, and so forth, I actually provide those kinds of resources
Hmm.
because people always ask me, well, what kind of financial planner? Where can I find a financial planner who's, or, how do I find a good accountant who can do the, or how do I make sure that, my will is, and my other estate documents are properly prepared? People ask me these questions all the time, so I've created, like yourself, a list of several lists of resources for these kinds of questions. In fact, if any of your attendees today want to have those resources, I would be happy to share them with you or with them or whoever wants them.
So, which brings up an interesting next point for it is you mentioned about some of your teachings and all that. Could you elaborate a little bit? Because I think this is an appropriate spot just to tell us if someone wanted to get more information about the topic and they wanted to hear you live, could you tell us where those opportunities are?
Well, sure. So right now, I'm involved in doing teaching in the local area, in-person teaching classes. The course is called Retirement Reinvented, Exploring Purpose, Identity, and Connection Beyond Career. So that's the course. It's a 4-session course, and I'll be teaching it again in the fall because I'm just wrapping up the spring session. And I also teach this at other organizations when requested. In addition, I have a men's group which meets on a monthly basis. Again, it's in person here in the local area. And it's a group of men who are, dealing with questions and issues and concerns around the subject of retirement. They've either retired or they're about to retire. And all these questions and issues and concerns come up in a very common way among many, many, many people. So we have dynamic conversation and we really help and support each other. We benefit from the collective wisdom and experience of the group. And so, both of these offerings really focus on a question. And that question is, what if retirement wasn't just the end of your career, but the start of the
Ah,
most dynamic, fulfilling, and meaningful phase of your life? That's something people generally haven't thought about. But I'm going to say it again, and I want your listeners to
repeat it.
ask themselves the question, what if retirement wasn't just the end of your career, but the start of the most dynamic, fulfilling, and meaningful phase of your life? That's a challenging question. It's a positive question. It's a question for people to embrace and try to explore. So the classes I teach and the men's group and the writing and all the rest are focused around that kind of exploration.
So you mentioned that your 4 sessions, you're in the process of finishing that up, but you'll be starting that again in the fall forward. Could you tell the listeners, like, do they need to sign up like today? Do you fill up? Is there a cost? Where do they go? How does this all work?
Right. So it's really just for people in this local area because they're taught in person here at a local school system in the school system. It's an evening course, and for those of us who are in this area, it's taught through mainline school night.
Okay.
Most people in this area are familiar with mainline school night, and they get the catalog, which is mailed out to every resident in this region. So they can look online at mainline school night, and they will see, the current catalog online, but they wouldn't be able to register for the fall until late summer.
Okay. And for those on the call, we have people out of this geographic area. How would somebody begin this? Are you suggesting it starts at one of these courses, or, where does someone begin this process?
Well, if they're interested in learning more, or if they want me to direct them to other resources, they can just contact me. My email is, I don't know if it's on these slides, but I'll just say it out
Please,
loud.
could you tell us?
Yeah, sure. Email is F as in Ford, R Myers, Myers, at Comcast.net. Again, that's Frmyers at Comcast.net. They're also welcome to call me if they have a pressing question, and that is 610 649 4343. 610 649 4343.
Okay, and I'll try to repeat that again. I made a note for it towards the end. For those on the call that missed it, I'll repeat that again for everyone who's listening. But that's awesome. And Ford, the class, could you just share, like, is there a cost structure for that? Is it a huge investment? I mean, what are you looking at for that?
These classes that are local are very inexpensive. I think it's $40 or $50, something like that. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, the men's group is no cost for that. And as for retirement coaching, there is a cost for that on an hourly basis. And if someone is serious about career, or rather retirement coaching, they could contact me and we could discuss those details.
Do you find that there's more people want to do the one-on-one session, or do they like the interaction with the group in these more public settings?
Actually, it's both. But I pretty much direct people toward the group activities because I'm not taking on many clients these days.
Okay, so you're very focused and specialized, which is a very
Yeah.
niche business, which is very good.
Yeah, I'm doing a little bit of one-on-one coaching, but not a lot. I mean, I used to do a ton of one-on-one coaching when I was in my full-time business, but since I'm also, in the retirement phase, I am working a lot less than I used to. I'm happy to say.
Okay. So tell us, Ford, if you will, about what the next chapter looks like, and how does housing play into
Okay.
that change?
Before we do that, I was thinking you should go back to your previous slide. How does one begin defining purpose? Can we talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, I'm sorry. That's my fault. Please do.
Do we have time?
Yes, yeah, we have time, and those on the call, I'm just reminding everyone, we've had some people jump in for it in the middle of this dialogue, so some of them are maybe missed some of your intro, but we will tell you how to contact Ford shortly. with all his contact information. And if you have questions, feel free to post it into the chat, and I'll try to answer them at the end of the presentation.
Okay. So the question here is, how does someone begin defining purpose after work? And I want to give folks a couple of tips on this because it's a
Okay.
very important question. In my opinion, when people are facing this question, in other words, when their honeymoon of retirement is over, when they realize that it's not just one long happy vacation, then I think that people need to get real, in quotes, get real, and start to face the tougher questions about about purpose, identity, meaning, direction. So the place to start, I think, is to go back to your core values.
Okay.
Everybody has core values. Now they may not know, they may not be able to articulate their core values, but for that there are assessments, there are tests, there are profiles that you can take which help to surface your top values. So go to your top values and try to focus your direction and your decisions and your planning on sticking very close to those values. Then start to think about the things that you genuinely love, the interests or the hobbies that excite and inspire you throughout your life. I don't mean something you just picked up throughout last week. I mean throughout your life. What have you been drawn to? What have been your real interests and passions and hobbies, and what has inspired you throughout the years? And then another question is, what have you always wanted to do or do more of, but you didn't have the time because you were busy building a career and raising a family and, paying the mortgage? Well, you're at a new phase of life where you have a lot more bandwidth, and maybe now you can actually get involved in those things that you've always wanted to do but didn't have the time or the energy or the bandwidth. Another thing to think about is when you were very young, very, very young, what did you love doing more than anything? Was it hiking and climbing and exploring the woods? Was it staying home and drawing and painting and making things out of clay? Was it, reading science books and doing experiments and going to the science museum? Go back to those core, initial, early interests and passions. Go back because you'll
Hmm.
usually discover that those things are still very much alive inside of you. And that's where you can begin to define purpose and find some direction. And finally, think about legacy. Legacy. As you're getting older and you need to begin to contemplate your mortality, and we all have friends, neighbors, relatives who are passing away more and more as we get older, it makes one think about legacy. So, what do you want to be known and remembered for? Where do you think that you could make a difference when your life is over? What do you want to contribute? How can you bring value to others, to the world? If you start thinking about those kinds of legacy questions and work backwards, then you will start to see purpose, meaning emerge from that thought process.
Could you, I'm just going to summarize what I heard you just say, and then I have a follow-up question. I heard you start with core values, right? That was the first thing. Then you went into what are your passions? What are you passionate about? And then you said something about things you've always wanted to do but didn't have time due to mortgage and raising family and all that thing. And then the most interesting thing I heard is going back to when you were young. And what age are you talking about, like childhood? Is that what
Yes,
you're so you're in the
yes.
childhood thing. That's interesting. I've never heard that before. Um, and then you talked about the legacy of mortality and what is it you want to be known for in the future. But I think my question is more about the first item. I just want to make sure that everyone's in line with when you talk about core values, could you just give us some samples or some ideas of what that really involves?
Sure. We have I mean, there are many assessments that people can do profiles where in 5 or 10 minutes they can identify their top values. It's basically multiple choice. It's a list of, I don't know, 30, 40 values, and people just check off the ones. It's rated 1 through 10. So 10 is, the most important to me. It's most central to who I am and how I define myself. And then if you're down at a number 1, it's like, well, that doesn't really matter to me. It's not really relevant in my life. So then you look at the 9s and the 10s, the ones that have the highest rating, and then you pick the top 5, and then you force rank them in order of priority.
Ah.
And boom, you have your top 5 values, and now you have your walking papers for the rest of your life.
And is this something that you mentioned your courses? You said that you're just completing your 4 sessions, but you'll be starting it back up in the fall. And then you mentioned your men's group. Are these the kinds of things that you would cover in those sessions? Is that the kind of stuff, or is that more like homework to be uh, covered?
The answer is in the class, yes. In the men's group, not so much, because that's more of a conversation, a
Okay.
dynamic conversation. It's not a structured course. In the course, yes, we do exercises like that and many others.
So for these things you just talked about, how long does this take to develop? Because we talked you talked earlier about the financial planner, and it seems like most people, and I think if I heard you properly, it sounds like most people they spend all their time on the financial piece to this puzzle, if you will. If you look at it as a puzzle and trying to figure out a direction, but they spend almost no time in this area. So how much time do you think it would take an average person to get through that process? Is this like a day? Is it a week? Is it something you have to think about over a series of months to really formulate the right, you call it your walking papers for the rest of your life? Does it take that much time?
Yes, it's months, years. It's not a couple days or an hour.
So you continually work, are you suggesting you're continually refining and working on it to really get that plan down to exactly what makes best sense for the person?
Yes. Look, think back to your career.
Yeah.
Your career evolved over many decades. You had to keep thinking about it, planning, making decisions, facing opportunities, facing setbacks, readjusting. This is no different. This is the second phase of your life. You're going to be doing this for 30, 40 years. So in the beginning, there's the hump. You have to sort of get over the hump, which is the major planning, the major thinking, prioritizing. And then once you're over that hump and you have a pretty good plan set out, then of course it's a process of adjusting, refining as circumstances continue to shift and change.
And Ford, what I've noticed about me personally is that after working in real estate, for 30, call it 39 years, and realizing at some point I'm gonna, retire and be doing something else. I love what I do, so it's something I think I could do for a long time. But I've also noticed that I've been um, kind of looking at some of you mentioned those childhood things, and I was active in as a young child, I spent a lot of time in game rooms, right? Playing machines and coin operated pinball machines and things like that. And what I've noticed lately is I've gravitated to that and I've started collecting stuff again.
Well,
And
that's
it's
a
kind of like
perfect,
a hobby. It's a
that's a
hobby
perfect,
right now.
perfect example.
Yeah.
Perfect example. Um, and I'm glad you mentioned that because it gives people a sense of what we're talking about. I mentioned the other things, climbing around in the woods and climbing rocks and trees or going to science museums and doing science experiments all the time or whatever. We're still those little kids. We're still little kids. We just happen to be living in adult bodies. So those core values and interests and passions, they've never changed. They've never disappeared.
It's interesting. The only thing is, I think in my example with my coin op stuff, it's also important that I need to get my wife on board because as I start bringing things into the home, and she's questioning, what is all this stuff? There is that part of the
Oh,
process.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So but it's an interesting process. Oh, that could be a client call. Either
Sorry.
that's okay. I know you're busy, and I'm trying
No,
to.
no, no, no.
I
I was,
appreciate your time today too. So
I was silly not to turn that off. I
it's
apologize.
okay. So are we okay for it to move on to the
Yes,
next
sir.
section? So so far I can't tell you how much information I've learned already, and we're not even through. But tell us a little bit about how housing and the next chapter plays into this whole process, and what have you seen in this example?
Right. Well, look, housing is a major, major subject that comes up when people are facing retirement. Many people stay in their home forever. Many people decide to make a change or downsize, perhaps move closer to kids, family, move to a warmer climate or a colder climate, whatever you're into.
Yeah, true.
Many people, decide to renovate their home to make it more age friendly to aging people. There's so many options. People also move into 55 plus communities, or they move into life care communities, also known as continuing care retirement communities. Some people have to go into long-term nursing care. I mean, there's just so many varieties, so many differences. And then, do you want to live in a high rise? Do you want to live downtown? Do you want to live in the country? Do you want to live in a townhouse? Do you want to live in a flat apartment, in a low rise building? So there are so many questions. There are actually consultants and books and articles that focus exclusively on these types of questions. It's big, big question. Personally, I have gone around to learn about these options. I have visited all the 55 plus communities, all the continuing care retirement communities. I've looked at all these different housing options to see what they really offer and don't offer, to separate the truth from the promise. It's been a very interesting education. But one way or another, this is a topic that looms large, and it's something that people really need to think about as they're entering into retirement. People will change physically. They won't have the same physical capacities that they did when they were younger. So they have to be realistic. And people also need to think about the financial side of housing. Many people will sell their home and move into a less expensive housing situation and use that asset, the money that they gain, to help fund their retirement. So there's so many questions about the housing, the financial side, the lifestyle. So it's a big topic of conversation.
And what's great for it is this whole workshop series, the ABCs of Senior Housing. What we focus on is we call it instead of being like the proactive versus the reactive.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing from you as our guest expert speaker is it sounds like your process really is about being proactive, and that is starting this process. I heard you 5 to 10 years in advance, and to create this plan, you called it your walking papers, if I heard correctly, or your life plan. It seems like it takes some years to uh, create the right plan. And that plan certainly does involve housing, and that's kind of like where I come in. But today's not really about that. But I'm glad you touched on this because I think it does talk specifically for our audience about um, being proactive and not waiting till it's too late and then you don't have the privilege of decision making. You said that you've gone around and visit, and you're an interesting you quest knowledge and seek things out and really have embraced this topic, which is amazing because most people they don't do that. They wait till the end. Something happens health-wise, and then it becomes a reactive situation, and then you're kind of stuck. You don't get to pick and choose what might be best and what you would want instead of someone else having them pick for you.
Well said. I agree with that completely. This is about being proactive. This is about creating a crystal clear vision of exactly how you want your retirement to look, how you want it to be, and who you want to be. In fact, we keep circling back to this topic of identity. Well, where you live and how you live largely defines who you are. You live in a house for 5, 10, 20 years, it's a part of you and you're a part of it. It's a part of your identity. And so our identity in retirement doesn't just change in terms of leaving the job. It also is changing perhaps where you live and how you live. This whole topic of identity has tentacles that reach out into so many different facets of retirement. Look, I had a client who said to me as they were retiring, they said, I don't know really who I am anymore. And I said, well, that makes sense. Again, they felt like they were weird or they were strange. And I said, no, this is very common. And I posed a question to them for them to think about. And the question was, who are you now that you're no longer who you were?
Wow, that's powerful.
I asked them that question. Who are you now that you're no longer who you were? So it requires some real thinking, some introspection, some clear envisioning. I do not think it's wise to just stumble through this process, reacting to external stimuli and hoping things will just work out magically on their own. I do not recommend that. I recommend putting the same thought, energy, and work, yes, work, into this planning process as you did into your career planning process.
Interesting. And it seems like, but am I also hearing that the majority of the people are starting this after, let's call it, you mentioned this honeymoon. The honeymoon was, so I guess someone retires and they take a cruise or a trip or they go somewhere. Then they come back and they say, now what? I'm bored. Is that what you typically see?
Yes, although even when they get back from a 2-week
Okay.
vacation, they might still be in that infatuation stage and they might be really enjoying the freedom and doing anything they want whenever they want. That's great, but it comes to a point where that shifts and they start thinking, wait a minute, is this all there is? I want to recommend a video, a YouTube video, which is very famous. And this video kind of shifted the whole conversation in this topic. It came out several years ago. It's had millions and millions and millions of views. The person who gave the talk is named Riley Moynes, Dr. Riley Moynes.
Could you spell the last name?
Riley, Riley Moynes, Moynes. The
Okay.
video is called The 4 Phases of Retirement. And he talks about he doesn't call it the honeymoon phase, I'm calling it the honeymoon phase, but he talks
Okay.
about that first phase of like, oh wow, I'm free, I can do anything I want, I'm liberated finally. Well, yeah, that's great. But then there's phase 2, which is a real reckoning. Then there's phase 3, then there's phase 4. So he did a lot of research. He talked to hundreds of people, retirees, and learned about their experiences. And he did this video it's a TED talk, a TEDx talk. And I highly recommend that people go watch that video on YouTube. Again, the title is The 4 Phases of Retirement.
And for tell just again, this Riley Moynes, it was Moynes.
Yep, that's
Is that
right.
and Riley? Okay, I'm going to listen to that.
Now
That's
there's a million great videos. As I said,
okay.
there's also a million great podcasts and blogs and so on. But this one video was a game changer. This shifted the whole conversation.
So how did you get into this into this business, if you will, of what you're doing now? Like, how did that come about? Am I hearing you that it's coming as a result of going through your own system and your own process?
Yes. So I would say that there's two or three influences that made this happen.
Okay.
Because look, I am a person who never thought about or talked about retirement when I was younger. In my own family, there has never been anybody who retired, ever.
Huh.
Every single person in my family worked till they dropped. So the very concept of retirement was alien, something it never even crossed my mind. So for me to get very involved in this topic was really kind of out of character. But basically, here's what happened, Brett.
Okay.
When I was doing career coaching and executive coaching full time, I was getting older. My clients, for whatever reason, seemed to be getting older too. Or maybe I was attracting people in my own age group. And they started asking me lots of questions about this transition to retirement. And it was fairly new because it had never really come up before. It used to be an afterthought. But now it became the primary focus of many, many, many conversations with clients. So I realized, well, I better start learning something about this topic because clients are starting to ask more and more about it. And then, secondly, I myself began to phase down, slow down and think about retiring. And so, first I kind of semi retired, then I fully retired, and now I'm back to semi retired. So it's been
I
a
like
process.
that.
It's been a process for me too. Okay. And so it's been a very interesting transition. And that's pretty much how I got into it. And I figured, look, if I'm going to help people with this, I better learn everything there is to learn about it. I better become an expert. So I read a lot, I studied a lot, I went to a program and actually became a certified retirement coach. I went through a whole training process and certification process, which was interesting, and that was way back in 2018.
Wait, so you started this, are you saying the retirement thing you started in 2018 started, so you were thinking about it right back then?
Yeah, it started really around 2017.
Wow. I'm impressed. That's impressive. And most people, they would not have done that. They would have started at 2026. Is that
Yeah, that's right. I mean, look, I don't expect everybody to go into the depth that I did because I'm doing this as a profession.
okay?
But for the average person who's retiring, like I said, at least 5 years before retirement, they should really start planning and thinking and developing their plan.
Well, this leads into, we talked about the proactive and reactive, which is what our whole workshop series is about. And those on the call that are thinking about, aging in place or staying, we were talking about the housing, just before you got into this section. It kind of dovetails into our home concierge service. You mentioned, Ford, that you have a very similar Rolodex system of trusted vendors that you would recommend for your clients. We've developed a very similar thing for our real estate business, and those on the call or those that will be listening to rebroadcasting of this call, you should know that you have access to this, and it is something that we take very seriously, and we can refer people to whatever you need to age in place or stay in your home or continue to maintain it, even if you're going to be selling your home and you need help with landscaping or handymen or painters or appliance repair, whatever that is. And we've been developing this system for since probably the late 90s. And we try to monitor. So when we give a client a referral forward, if we give somebody a painter or a handyman, I always like to follow up and ask a series of questions. How did the person do? Did they come on time? Did they get the job done? Were you satisfied? Would you use them again? were they cost effective, right? Because if we have people in our system that don't live up to those standards, they're removed from our system. And we develop the system, we get referrals. Ford, you've referred me to people that I've added to this group, some financial planners that are awesome for seniors. And they come from referrals and recommendations. But again, if anyone on the call, you need people, any one of these categories, feel free to reach out anytime. We don't generate any revenue from it. It's just to add value, and it's a way to stay in contact with our customers and clients.
I think that's brilliant and incredibly helpful. And I hope people are listening, and I hope they'll take advantage of this, because this is an amazing resource that can save them a huge amount of time and frustration and maybe even money.
So that, Ford, takes us, we're kind of winding down to the last bit. We've had some people that haven't listened, that came in a little bit past the beginning. So maybe I'll stop now. And the question I've gotten a couple of messages for it already was, how do they reach you? And I will make sure I'm saying this right. The best way is email, and it's going to be F.R. Myers, so Ford R. Myers, Myers, dot at Comcast.net,
Yeah, hold
correct?
on, hold on. Let me clarify. It's F as in Ford,
Okay.
R, Myers at Comcast.net.
Okay. And telephone 619-649-4343.
No, it's 610
Six, oh,
Six
okay.
four nine 4343. Let me repeat that.
Thank
610 649 4343.
Thank you, Ford. It's sometimes hard to read my own writing.
Well, elder people like
Yes.
yourself,
Yes.
it's understandable.
Yes.
You start to lose some of the capacity, and don't worry. We understand people like you getting up there in years.
Yes. Thank you, Ford. You're very kind. You're very
Yeah,
kind.
well, we have to make certain accommodations to people like yourself.
Thank you. And again, those on the call, remember that if there are many people that signed up for it, because sometimes it's about weather. It happens to be a super nice day, and they're going to be listening in the future. So that's all the contact information. We wanted to talk a little bit about retirement. It's not. It sounds like it's not just leaving work. It's really about building what's next, and your home should support that vision. Is that that statement you would agree with, Ford?
Totally, completely. It's a critical element of your retirement plan.
So I wanted to move kind of into the last part, and that is because we're coming up on it. I said we were going to try to keep it to 60 minutes. Was what's the most important step? Here, let me just advance this once my computer wakes up. I think it's taking a little nap. That people on the call or those that are going to be listening could take regarding their retirement concerns. What is that step you would recommend, Ford?
To sit down, look inside, start to think about the questions we've raised on today's session. Who am I now that I'm no longer who I was? What do I want my legacy to be? What are my top values? What kinds of things do I love and passionate about? And how can I begin to formulate a sustainable retirement plan that will carry me through the next 30, 40 years?
And was it also the one thing I didn't hear you just say is the timing for starting that process? Would you still say 5 years prior to an
Yes.
anticipated retirement? Is that
Ideally, yes. But as you know, and as you said, most people don't start this process until they're right on the doorstep of retirement. So look, if that's the case, then fine. Just do the best you can, but you'll need to take it seriously and move quickly to get a plan together. The biggest thing of all is have a plan. Think it through. Don't just muddle along and, bounce around like a pinball in a pinball machine. Instead, you want to be in charge, in control, having a sense of direction and purpose and having a plan.
I had two questions that I got for you in our chat. The first one was, how does someone deal with a mindset shift? As far as like improving their confidence and security in retirement, anything you'd recommend to help with a mindset shift?
Yeah, I would say take advantage of a lot of the great podcasts, articles, books that are out there. Learning, in other words, by learning and considering different perspectives, that's the best way. And then if you need additional help, you can take courses and workshops, not just mine, they're in every community. Even go to your local senior center or look at your own local adult learning
Okay.
organizations and take courses. If you still need further help, then there are retirement coaches, of course.
And the other question for it is I got was, do you get involved in the topic of like balancing everything in terms of it was real estate, investments, cash flow, retirement, and how do you orchestrate that part of the process?
Well, again, I do talk to people about real estate and finance and their will, but only in a superficial way. I only give them basic information and I help them to sort of put it together as part of a plan. But when it comes down to the details, the crunching the numbers and all of that, then I refer them to real experts who do this all day long. Does that
Makes
answer your
sense.
question?
Yeah, that answers my question. And I just had one I'm going to add because I kept thinking about this throughout the entire time we spent today, which I've really learned a ton about the topic. Is there any like one mistake that you find people typically make um, in this arena? Is there anything you could say, boy, this is I hear this time and time and time again.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, they fall into this mythology, this false vision that when they retire, it's going to be, flowers and balloons and marching bands, and it's going to be one giant, long, liberated vacation. That's a gigantic mistake. And if they follow that illusion, they're going to be sorely disappointed. As I said, yes, of course, there will be that honeymoon period. You'll have a great time. You'll take some vacations. You'll play a lot of golf. But then inevitably, they hit a wall and they go, wait a minute, is this all there is? I got to do this for the next 30 years? So that's an illusion. And we have to instead be more mindful, more deliberate, more conscious, and planful in this whole approach.
Okay. Well, this was a fantastic way. Knowledge was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. It falls into our ABCs of senior housing in that, being uh, proactive versus reactive, starting the process early. It dovetails so nicely into all the other uh, webinars that we've hosted. And I want to give the audience an opportunity to uh, certainly connect with us. You can connect on social media, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. We host a ton of events and things for our clients, and we'd love for you to um, stay in contact with us. Um, I want to let you know that there will be a survey. Everyone that's on the call, you'll get a survey. Those that weren't on the call, in about a period of about 2 weeks, forward, we'll have this webinar available and we'll be hosting on our website. And those that didn't get a chance to listen certainly can. Any other final comment, Ford, you want to make before we wrap up today?
Yes, when I talk to people and I tell them all these things that we've been talking about today, they look at me sometimes and they say, God, that sounds like a lot of work. I don't want to work. I'm retired. The reason I retired is so I don't have to do any more work. And I say to them, I'm sorry. I didn't make all this up. I'm basing all of my comments on the experiences of tons and tons of people and tons of research and tons of reading and tons of. So, look, I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news if you look at it that way, but I don't look at it as bad news. I think it's good news because it means you can take control, you can create a vision for your own retirement that will be wonderful, long lasting, enduring. I believe that doing a lot of concentrated work on this in the upfront stage pays off over the long term with a wonderful retirement. So it's a choice. My hope is that people will take the choice to do the work up front so that they can then enjoy a really great, meaningful, purposeful, satisfying retirement over the long term.
Well, Ford, this has been extremely valuable. I hope everyone got as much out of as I have today. And I want to again thank you for spending Saturday with us today. And I can't thank you enough, Ford.
It's a great pleasure, and I enjoyed it very much. Have a great weekend.
Okay, everyone on the call, thank you, everyone on the call, and those that are listening in the future, thank you. And we will be back next month again with another expert in the ABCs of senior housing. I'm Brett Furman, and with my guest host, Ford Myers, we thank you for spending Saturday today with us.
Bye bye, everybody.